Like everywhere you turn, there's another opinion, another message, another notification screaming for your attention. Your phone is buzzing. The TV is on. Someone's calling your name. Social media is flooding you with everyone else's life, their success, their failures, their drama. Even in the silence, your own thoughts are loud. Your doubts, your overthinking, your need to figure everything out. It never stops. And somewhere in that chaos, you've been told God is speaking. But all you hear is static. God, let me tell you something that will free you right now. You're not broken. You haven't failed because you can't hear God clearly. It's not that he's gone silent. It's that the world has turned up its volume. The truth is, we live in a world that's addicted to noise. Constant stimulation, constant validation, constant motion. We've been taught that stillness is laziness and silence is emptiness, but that's a lie. A dangerous one, because the voice of God, it doesn't compete, it doesn't scream, it doesn't demand. God's voice is like a whisper in the wind. It's there, but you have to lean in. Leaning in takes intention. It takes awareness. It takes a decision to stop chasing everything else. Not forever, but just long enough to notice how loud your life has become. Just long enough to recognize that you've been tuning into everything but him. Your news feed has become your scripture. Your friends have become your compass. Your feelings have become your truth. No wonder you're confused. No wonder you're exhausted. You were never meant to carry so many voices. Let's go deeper. The volume of the world is not accidental. It's intentional. The more distracted you are, the less you notice the whisper of peace. The more hurried you are, the harder it is to find clarity. And here's the kicker. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you. He just needs to drown you. He just needs to fill your ears with everything except God's voice. That's enough to paralyze you, to make you second guess every decision, to make you question every conviction in circles, chasing peace you can't buy and purpose you can't name. But what if you just stopped? Not forever, not even for long, just long enough to realize this truth. The voice you've been desperate to hear is already near. But to hear it, you've got to slow down. You've got to start listening beneath the noise. You've got to admit that you've been listening to everything else, and it's made you tired. Start here. Don't try to solve it. Don't try to force it. Just become aware. Aware that the noise is real, that the pressure is real, that the pressure is real, that life is loud, but God is still speaking. That stillness is not emptiness. It's access. Stay with this. Have you ever had a moment where you thought God was speaking, but later you weren't sure? You felt peace. At first, you made the move. You trusted the feeling. But then doubt came in. Things didn't go as planned. Now you're questioning whether you ever heard him at all. Was it faith, or was it just your own desire disguised as divine direction? This is where most people get stuck, not in the silence, but in the battle of voices that come after it. The ones that all sound like you, but each one pulls in a different direction. Let's call it what it is. Your mind is crowded. And the crowd isn't just noise from the outside. Sometimes it's the voice of fear pretending to be caution. It's guilt masquerading as wisdom. It's insecurity dressed up as humility. And when all these voices start talking at once, you can't tell which one is trauma, which one is the spirit, and which one is your survival instinct trying to protect you from pain you haven't fully healed from. Here's the truth. Fear shouts, but God whispers. Guilt nags, but God corrects. Shame condemns, but God convicts with kindness. You've been listening to so many tones, it's no wonder you can't recognize the real one anymore. God doesn't yell. He doesn't panic. He doesn't guilt trip you or manipulate you. His voice is steady, secure, loving. Even when he corrects, it leads to freedom, not fear. That's how you start to tell the difference. Ask yourself, what is the fruit of this voice? If it brings confusion, anxiety, or fear, it's not him. If it brings peace, even in uncertainty, even if it challenges you, you're hearing his heart, but you have to be trained to know the tone of God. Think about music. If you're in a loud room and your favorite song comes on quietly in the background, you might miss it. Unless you know the melody by heart. That's what it's like with God's voice. You don't need him to be louder. You need to become more familiar. And that only happens through time. Well, I'm going to take on Katie. Repetition, trust, experience. You won't always get it right. There will be days you move on what you think is his leading and later realize it wasn't. But even then, listen closely. He's not mad. He's not silent because he's angry. He's not disappointed in your attempt to follow. In fact, he honors the effort. You're learning. You're becoming more sensitive to the difference between his whisper and your own wants. Don't let confusion stop you. Don't let doubt paralyze you. And definitely don't let the enemy convince you that you're too spiritually deaf to hear God. That's a lie. You're not deaf. You're just in training. You're not unworthy. You're just in process. You're learning the voice of your Father. And sometimes that means unlearning the voices of fear, shame, and people-pleasing that have taken his place. Here's your next step. Pay attention to the tone. Not just the words you hear internally, but the tone they carry. Is it pushy or patient? Is it panicked or peaceful? God's voice will never pressure you into panic. It will never drag you through anxiety. It may challenge you. It may even feel uncomfortable, but it will always lead to greater clarity, not confusion. Remember this, confusion is a sign to pause, not to proceed, and peace is your green light. It's not the absence of challenge, but the presence of divine certainty that even if you don't have all the answers, you're not walking alone. Stay with this. You try to sit still just for a minute, and suddenly your mind explodes with noise. A million thoughts rush in. Your to-do list, that thing you said yesterday, that thing you didn't say, the what-ifs, the why-nots, the what-now. You sit in silence hoping to hear God, and all you hear is your own racing thoughts. And after a few uncomfortable seconds, you give up. You grab your phone, you open something, anything, because silence feels like a void, but what if that void is exactly where the voice of God is hiding? You've been trained to fear quiet, conditioned to fill every moment. Every pause in your day has become an excuse to scroll, to binge, to numb, to escape. You were told productivity is power, that stillness is wasting time, that silence is laziness, but that's not how God works. That's how the world works. Let me tell you the truth. God doesn't shout over chaos. He waits for you to quiet down. Silence isn't a punishment. It's a portal, a sacred space where the noise fades and your awareness sharpens. It's where the fog begins to lift. It's where your spirit becomes tuned to a frequency you couldn't hear when everything else was turned up too loud. That stillness you're avoiding, it's not empty. It's alive. It's not absence. It's access. But you have to retrain your brain to stay in it. We've been taught to crave dopamine, not discipline. We want the rush, the hit, the next. Silence doesn't give you that hit. But it gives you something better. It gives you alignment. It gives you alignment. It gives you the space to remember who you are and who God is. It's in the stillness that you stop reacting and start receiving. It's in the quiet that the voice of truth gets louder, not in volume, but in weight. And let me be clear. Silence isn't just about noise reduction. It's about intentional focus. You can be alone in a quiet room and still have a mind screaming at you. That's why silence starts with surrender, not just of sound, but of control, of constant thinking, of fixing, of figuring it all out. You don't need to solve everything before God speaks. You need to be still enough to listen. Stillness is not weakness. It's warfare. It's resistance in a world that worships distraction. It's a spiritual rebellion against the addiction to busyness. When you sit in silence and resist the urge to run, to scroll, to fill, to numb, you are fighting for your connection with the voice that matters most. Start small. Don't wait for the perfect quiet morning with candles and soft music. Find God in the ordinary silence, on your commute with the radio off, in the bathroom when you take a breath before your next task. Before bed, in that moment, you usually reach for your phone. Don't sit, breathe, listen, ask nothing, expect nothing. Just be there, because in that stillness, something powerful happens. Your soul begins to you start to feel grounded again. You remember that peace isn't something you chase, it's something you choose. And in that quiet space, you don't always get words. You don't always get a sentence or a sign. But you get presence. You get still water. And still water, it reflects. It shows you what's real. It reveals what's underneath. God is not avoiding you. He's not waiting for you to be more holy or more perfect. He's waiting for you to be present. And presence requires pause. Here's the principle. If you want to hear God clearly, you have to create room for him to speak. Not just with your schedule, but with your heart. Make room. Make silence sacred again. Guard it like it's your lifeline, because it is day with this. God speaks, but he doesn't always speak the way you expect. He doesn't always use words. Sometimes he speaks through impressions, sometimes through peace, sometimes through restlessness, through dreams, through silence, through scripture, through people, through creation. And if you've only been listening for one specific sound, you might miss the symphony of his communication all around you. Learning God's language takes time, just like learning any new tongue. You wouldn't expect to become fluent in French just by listening to it once a week. You'd immerse yourself. You'd repeat words, you'd mess up. You'd try again, and eventually your ear would adjust. The patterns would make sense. The phrases would feel familiar. That's what it means to learn how God speaks stuff, because here's the thing, God is always speaking, you just haven't always known what to listen for. You've been waiting for a booming voice when what God sent was a deep peace. You were asking for a sign in the sky, but he gave you a stillness in your spirit. You wanted fireworks. He gave you a whisper, not because he's hiding, but because he wants relationship, not just reaction. His voice is not a command you obey out of fear. It's a presence you recognize through connection. So how do you learn his language? You begin by spending time in his word. Not just for information, but for intimacy. The Bible isn't just a book. It's God's vocabulary. It's the dictionary of his tone. If you want to know what he sounds like, read what he's already said. Get familiar with how he moves, how he comforts, how he corrects, how he speaks life. Scripture trains your ear to know what is and isn't him, because his voice always aligns with his word. He will never tell you to do something that contradicts his nature. He won't use fear to lead you. He won't use shame to change you. That's not his language. That's not his way. And then watch your life. Pay attention to the patterns. Look at how he's spoken to you before. Maybe you always feel a deep grounded sense of peace when you're on the right path. Maybe he often speaks to you in moments of worship, or when you're walking outside, maybe a verse keeps coming up. A conversation echoes in your mind, a sense that you're being pulled or pushed towards something. Don't dismiss those patterns. That's personal. That's how he's been developing your personal dialect. And don't get discouraged if you feel like you don't get it right away. Fluency doesn't come overnight. And hearing God is not about getting a perfect signal. It's about staying in relationship. Because the more you seek him, the more familiar his voice becomes. You'll stop second-guessing every nudge. You'll know the difference between your voice and his, between impulse and inspiration, between fear and faith. Let me remind you, God is not trying to confuse you. He's inviting you close. This isn't about being hyper-spiritual or emotionally sensitive. It's about recognizing that your Creator built you with the capacity to commune with him. You were designed to hear from God. You just have to give yourself permission to believe it, And when you do, your sensitivity sharpens. Your discernment deepens, and you'll begin to notice that the voice of God is often less like a sentence and more like a sense. Less like an order and more like an invitation. So here's the principle. To hear God clearly, stop trying to make him sound like people. He's not like them. His words don't manipulate, they don't pressure, they don't confuse, they don't fade, they build, they strengthen, they clarify, they resonate. He's not hiding. He's not hiding, he's speaking. You're learning. Stay with this. The world is loud. You wake up and within minutes, notifications are lighting up your phone. Headlines are demanding your attention. And everyone's opinion is screaming at you through a screen. Before you even take a breath, your peace is already under attack. And if you don't fight for it intentionally, it'll get drowned out by the noise. But here's the truth you need to hold on to. You cannot hear the still, steady voice of God if you're constantly plugged into the chaos of the world. Tuning into him requires tuning out the rest. That doesn't mean you live in isolation or run from every sound. It means you choose what gets access to your inner space. It means you protect your peace like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. You're not just distracted, you're being drained. Every scroll, every post, every voice you absorb is shaping your beliefs, influencing your emotions, and cluttering your spirit. That's why you feel distant from God, not because he moved, but because you've let too many other voices move in. You're giving your attention away for free, and it's costing you clarity. You can't expect to hear divine direction while being constantly fed worldly confusion. You need a filter. Not everything deserves a front row seat to your mind. Not every headline, opinion, or update needs your response. Some things need to be left unread. Some apps need to be silenced. Some conversations need to be postponed or ended altogether. Because peace is expensive and clarity even more so. You have to choose it over and over again. You have to silence the external so you can sharpen the internal. You'll never feel ready. You'll always feel like there's something more urgent, more important, more now. But urgency is often the enemy of intimacy. If the enemy can keep you constantly rushed, he can keep you spiritually numb. And when you're numb, you settle. You listen to whatever's loudest, not whatever's true. That's why creating space is a form of spiritual warfare. Every time you shut the noise out, you're opening the door to divine alignment. Every time you say a not now to the world, you're saying a speak, Lord, into heaven. Don't overcomplicate it. It's not about quitting your job or deleting your life. It's about micro shifts, choosing stillness over stimulation, depth over distraction. Maybe that means no phone for the first hour of your day. Maybe it means worship instead of news. Maybe it means 5 intentional minutes in your car before walking into work. These are the moments where your spirit gets quiet enough to recognize the presence that's always been near. You were never meant to live on constant input. You were built for connection, not consumption. And when you give God the space to speak, He does. Not with noise, not with hype, but with clarity, with peace, with the kind of calm that the world can't touch or take away. So here's the reminder. Tuning out the world isn't running away, it's returning home. It's remembering what matters. It's choosing a frequency that doesn't shift with the trends or change with the news cycle. It's locking in with the voice that created you, knows you, and still chooses to speak directly to you. Protect that, fight for it, because clarity is not found in the crowd. It's found in the quiet. Stay with this. You've been seeking, listening, trying to quiet the world so you can hear God clearly. But now comes the part that scares most people. Trust. It's one thing to hear a whisper in your spirit, to feel that nudge in your heart, but it's another thing entirely to act on it, especially when it doesn't make logical sense or fit your timeline. But listen, God's voice won't always line up with your logic. He's not confined to your comfort zone or your 5-year plan. Sometimes His direction will stretch you, confuse you, challenge you, and even scare you. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. That means it's real. That means it's Him. Because God's voice often pulls you out of the boat before you see the ground beneath you. It invites you to walk on water, to move while the storm is still raging, to trust when you have no evidence but peace. And that kind of peace, it's not weak, it's not passive, it's powerful. It's the kind of peace that doesn't make sense until you realize who gave it to you. You're not being asked to trust your emotions. You're being invited to trust the one who made you, who sees what you can't, who's been with you in every moment, even when you didn't feel it. The voice you're learning to recognize, the one that leads with love, not pressure, peace, not panic, purpose, not performance, that's the voice of your Creator. And the more you walk with Him, the more familiar that voice becomes. It starts to drown out the fear, the doubt, the noise of the world telling you you're not ready, not good enough, not qualified. But here's the truth. You don't have to be perfect to be guided. You just have to be willing. God doesn't wait for you to get it all right before He speaks. He speaks so you can get it right, so you can walk in alignment, so you can take one faithful step at a time. And yes, you might miss it sometimes. You might confuse your voice with His. You might hesitate. But that's part of the journey. God isn't grading you. He's guiding you, and He's patient. He knows your heart. If you're truly seeking Him, truly listening, truly wanting to follow, then trust that He will make it clear. Trust that He will correct you gently if you wander off course. That's what a good shepherd does. He doesn't punish the sheep for losing direction. He calls them back with love. So don't let fear of getting it wrong keep you from stepping out. Obedience isn't about having all the answers, about trusting the one who does. And when you do, when you start walking in faith instead of fear, when you follow that quiet voice that calls you deeper, everything changes. Your confidence grows. Your purpose becomes clearer. Your life begins to reflect the one who is leading it. And suddenly you're not just hearing God, you're moving with Him in sync, in peace and in power. So here's the final reminder. If the voice brings peace, points to love, calls you higher and aligns with truth, trust it. Lean in. Take this step. You weren't created to live confused. You were made to live in communion. And the God who speaks still speaks now. He's speaking to you. Don't just hear Him. Believe Him.